Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am Marc Givler. Kevin Noon joining me, as always, or as usual. Not always.
Most of the time.
Sometimes, yes. Exciting time at BuckeyeHuddle.com. As you guys know, Jeremy Birmingham has been brought on as our Director of Recruiting, so Jeremy and I are going to be working in tandem on recruiting coverage moving forward. Several pieces of content from Jeremy up on the site at BuckeyeHuddle.com right now if you'd like to read that, and he's also doing a chat on the board, so if you're watching this, get on the message board and ask him some questions. We are going to talk about the decision today by Elbert Hill. Ohio's top prospect in 2026 commits to USC over Ohio State, Oregon, and Alabama. And thoughts immediately go to kind of what does this mean for Ohio State? And the first thing I'm going to say is I don't suspect Ohio State has just finished recruiting Elbert Hill. A lot of guys, when they commit elsewhere, they move on from. I don't suspect this will be the case, especially with his proximity to Columbus, with Sam Greer, his teammate, continuing to work that. I do suspect Ohio State will continue to try and sway that recruitment back in their direction. But that being said, they can no longer kind of wait and see what he's going to do. They've now seen his decision here, and they're going to need to act. And so, Kevin, I guess first of all, just your reaction to the news. I think it felt like this has kind of been rumored for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I've been talking to some people who'd said that that Elbert was talking about shocking the world, and so many times shocking the world doesn't shock anybody, but this time, again, I don't know how many people were shocked. I mean, I think there are a lot of Ohio State fans that are upset about it, but just like there were a lot of people that were probably upset when Naeem Offord committed to Ohio State. And while he did not end up staying home, it's still a long ways to National Signing Day. Every commitment Ohio State has, remember at this point, none of them are signed. So anything can kind of happen at this point. But yeah, it's a bit of a curveball, because you look at the state of Ohio, and the state of Ohio had three corners, I think, that really had kind of separated themselves from the bunch. And I think that of that cut of three, that Elbert was certainly the one who had the most, most decorations. I think was one who was being talked about the most. So Elbert did Ohio State a favor, though, in a lot of ways, because now Ohio State has to live in a reality of where it is, as things stand this moment, not getting Elbert Hill. It's better now than in mid-November.
Yeah, it's much better to know today that Rock is committed somewhere else than to fight this until November and then he commits somewhere else, because A, you have more time for other targets now, but you also know what the scoreboard is, and you can kind of have some time to maybe try and sway this back, whereas if he does this in November, it's the clock's running out. They played stall ball on you, and the old Dean Smith, the four corners is that what they called it,
yes,
and just kind of run the clock out. But so yeah, not great news for Ohio State here. They do have Jacob Weatherspoon committed in-state among that cornerback group. I personally like Jacob quite a bit. Reminds me of Jordan Hancock with his versatility and what he can do in the secondary. I don't suspect they'll revisit the Victor Singleton recruitment, who originally committed to Illinois and then recently flipped to Texas A&M. I suspect that's probably not going to happen for people who are wondering about that one. But there's two we want to talk about, and I give some credit here to Berm. He wrote about these guys and a few other guys as well this morning at BuckeyeHuddle.com, so you can kind of check that out. He kind of got ahead of the Elbert Hill news today and was like, hey, if this goes sideways, here's what to look for. But I want to talk about two of the names that Berm talks about, because I think those are the two that will get the biggest focus right now. And the first one is Jordan Thomas out of Bergen Catholic in New Jersey. Been up a lot. Had some ties to Ohio State there. His teammate Quincy Porter, former high school teammate, doing great things as a freshman right now at Ohio State. So that's got to be like the first name, right, that kind of comes to your mind?
I think so. I mean, there's been a lot of positive feelings there with Jordan. I certainly had talked to some people who felt that it would be hard to tell him no even if Rock were in the class. So now this kind of opens up the door. But again, with Ohio State still pursuing Elbert Hill, I mean, you can't sit there and dilly-dally with this, but I think that there is a lot of positive momentum there. I'm not saying that, for certain, I don't have a crystal ball or an RPM or any of these things, or to steal Marc's term, a magical orb of wonderment, but I like where things stand with him, but we still have to kind of see what things look like now with the deck being reset a little.
Yeah, and this is a kid who, has talked about making a spring decision, a pre-summer decision. We'll see. I mean, this could maybe speed things up on that front. I think that's a name to watch in the immediate future, and not just 2 to 3 months down the road. That may be a name to watch over the next several weeks. And another name who I think people know, but for one reason or another has not been maybe as heavily linked to Ohio State as maybe like a Jordan Thomas. Justice Fitzpatrick down St. Thomas Aquinas, I think, has become an interesting player for them. I talked to someone early this morning who, before the Elbert Hill decision even came down, said, kind of keep an eye on Justice Fitzpatrick and Ohio State as things are trending at this moment. And so that's a kid we're going to effort to go see here on our trip. But that's another name I would watch. Obviously, Ohio State's got some good history at St. Thomas Aquinas. It's been a little bit since they've been able to sign a kid, but that's still a program they recruit very heavily, and that's a guy that they have a good relationship with. They did recruit his older brother.
Yeah, with Minka, and of course everybody just has this assumption that he would follow his brother to Alabama, but Nick Saban isn't there anymore. A lot of the coaches that were there when Minka was there are not there anymore. I think the jury is still out to some degree on Kalen DeBoer, and this is not an indictment on Kalen DeBoer and be saying that they're never going to land a player again. They're still doing quite well in recruiting, but some of that in-house advantage is gone. So, we have talked to Justice Fitzpatrick before on Southern Swing, and I think that the video was lightly watched because people kind of wrote it off. Well, as Marc said, we're trying to get to St. Thomas Aquinas and Fort Lauderdale when we turn the leg down to Florida. You're probably going to want to watch this one. I mean, I'm going to be really interested. There are a lot of times I have a feeling I know what the player is going to say to a certain extent. I'm really curious as to what Justice is going to say in light of this Elbert Hill news. I mean, we were not necessarily in position the way that we were the day that we talked to Jeremiah Smith before he'd committed. Something had happened, and we just happened to be pulling right up on Shamada Madonna at that point. I'm like, we have got to get this done. But I would keep an eye for it.
Yeah, that was the old Georgia buzz. He was going to flip to Georgia, and the whole Georgia stuff was going on, and the visit was happening and everything else. And so, that was amazing timing, actually. We'll see if we can get amazing timing on Justice Fitzpatrick, but this is definitely a good time to go see him at this point, because it's one of those stories in recruiting about if you stay in something long enough, you never know how the dominoes are going to fall. You never know how the board's going to go. If you stay with it long enough, sometimes things can kind of turn your way toward the end that maybe you didn't expect when the process started. So we'll see what happens there. But those are my two names to kind of watch here. We'll have more updates here, of course, from Southern Swing, but with this happening while we were on the road, we felt it was appropriate here. We had just met with Deuce Gerald's here, so look for that interview on BuckeyeHuddle.com, but we thought we should knock this out real quick and just kind of talk a little bit about the Elbert Hill decision. Kevin, any parting thoughts here before we move on?
Really, I just want to reiterate what Marc talked about at the beginning. Exciting news over at Buckeye Huddle with the addition of Jeremy Birmingham, if you're more formal. Be sure to jump on board. We have seen a flurry of activity, and now is the time. We're on the road with Southern Swing. Berm is already turning content. He's going to have some great recruiting updates coming down the pipe as well. So there's no reason not to get on board. Check us out, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Be sure, if you're watching us on YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, hit that bell, subscribe to the channel, and give us a thumbs up. All of that helps us with our distribution as we are continuing to get bigger and bigger.
Appreciate everyone watching and listening. Appreciate your support, guys, as always. We'll talk to you soon.